Who knows water? This guy knows water. Here's your look at the Mattel Masters of the Universe Origins Snout Spout, the heroic water blasting firefighter. Known as Eternia's bravest, Snout Spout charges into danger without question. As a toy, Snout Spout sucks. Thanks for watching. No, we're obviously going to have a look at the rest of Snout Spout. Let's grab the tape measure. Stop joking around. Figuring out just how tall Snout Spout is involves me actually taking the tape measure right at the very top of his ears. And the figure stands about 6 inches in height, or roughly 15 centimeters tall. Bringing in a couple of figures for comparisons. Here's what Snout Spout looks like next to He-Man. The ongoing trend, of course, is the fact that they are going to be sharing the same bodies. So from that standpoint, they are the same size. Snout Spout, though, is just a tad bit taller. Here's what he also looks like next to Man-at-Arms. Same rule applies. Exact same use of body. Different armor added. Different head sculpts tooled. Here's what he also looks like next to Orko. That's not a figure I can actually say the same thing repeated again. Orko, obviously, in this case, without his flight stand, only comes to about the waist of Snout Spout. As for the figure's accessories, Mr. Spout comes included with a mini comic. Mr. Spout. Sounds like one of those Mr. Men books. Not featured here on the front, instead we have Mr. Leech, a figure we've already had a look at. Knight of the Leech is advertised on the front for this mini comic. On the back, though, we've got, of course, the promotional images of the other figures, all illustrated. In the corners, we've got the 2000X series He-Man and Skeletor, and then on the bottom corner, Mantenna and Pighead. Just a note that the ones in the corners are all ones I still have to pick up. Already having a look at Leech. Check out that video if you have a chance. Again, not featured here on the front. However, though, Snout Spout does make an appearance. It's not until, actually, well, it's technically page 3 that we see him in the back there. He's just behind Buzz-Off. Once again, I do have to comment that the illustration, the artwork that's featured inside the pages of these mini comics is fantastic. This, I think, is one of the best ones I've seen so far. It's not very much of a read, and at least because I did pick this up online from a place that was selling at least US packaging, you may notice already that there's bubbles. I don't know whether when we eventually do get ourselves international versions of these hitting our store shelves here in Canada, I don't know how long that's going to take. We are actually still, just to sidetrack myself right now, we now still are sitting on the shelves here in Canada, the purple tinted Evil Lyn, Fisto, and I think Clamp Champ, I think those are the 3 figures we have right now in Canadian store shelves. We got to stock better here in Canada. Anyways, that's the mini comic. I'm not going to rant anymore about that. The figure then comes included with 2 ways to display the figure. If you're one for gimmicks, then you want to look to this side. If you're one just to display, then you're looking to this side. We're going to look to display right now first. The figure comes included with a tank. Likely an oxygen tank, unless it's actually holding the water, although it's not really attaching in this case to his head, unlike this one is over here. Maybe it is actually a water tank, but it clips onto his back. You can see there's a little clip of red plastic. It actually kind of looks like a tongue. Go ahead and take the figure and they'll locate it on the back. For a second, I thought it would actually slot here, but you can't get enough clearance to fit that onto that. I mean, you would have to pull it out, or you may have to even just take the armor off completely, slot this in, and then put it back on the figure, because there's just not enough of an angle to get that on there. But you can easily as well attach it just above it. And also, too, if you had it a little bit lower, it probably would look a little out of place. So we're going to clip it onto the top using the tongue. The figure also comes included with, like the retro figure, his axe/lifter. I don't know what they would actually call this. It's sort of like a selfie stick for his snout. That's a lot of S's. The top is actually, though, more of a firefighter's axe. Good for cutting down doors. Anything that's on fire, I guess. Isn't there a lot of things on fire in Eternia right now? Who's letting this stuff slip? But anyways, this can be held in his hand. The proper, I think, way of actually displaying it, we're just going to put the tank here there for a second. The proper way, I think, to display it is actually attaching it by here. This handle right here. Or you can also, of course, nobody's committing you to the idea. You can have it a little bit lower, but it gets awfully close to that clamp on the end. Or you can have it a little bit higher. But really, that is the best place to have it held it in his hand, is right there. And then go ahead and put the backpack back on his back. There we go. That's what he looks like if you did want to have him just displayed the way that, without actually squirting anybody in the eye. Another way you can also display it too is taking this and flipping it around like I did do at the beginning of the video. The earlier original vintage version of Snout Spout actually did have a handle like this that helped to elevate his nose while he was squirting everybody in the face. You can, of course, replicate that nicely here with the figure. A nice way of also displaying the figure, too. It gives you a purpose. It gives a reason why it would have to be, why you would have a snout like this to squirt out the water. His nose, by the way, doesn't really angle well enough on its own, so this sort of gives you the idea that he has to hold it up by himself to be able to squirt properly the water out of his nose. This tank does fall off. Does fall off a little too frequently. But yeah, that's going to be the way I'm going to be displaying the figure, at least from a display standpoint. Now, though, if you did want to actually have this guy displayed with water, this is going to get everywhere. Yes, for that, I've got myself a little container of water. I don't know why I had to say that with an accent. The figure also comes included with, like the original vintage toy, a swappable head that actually does squirt out water. You've got yourself a bladder, which I believe is the term to hold actually anything that holds a liquid inside is known as a bladder. It clips the same way, although it's actually a different color than the backpack the figure comes included with. Just take the one that so easily falls off anyways. Just show you the difference between the two. They're not trying to obviously mirror the same things together, but this essentially clips onto the back of his torso. What you do is squeeze the bladder, and then let it go, and of course it'll draw the water up the snout and into the chamber. This, of course, will involve you having to take the handle. First of all, we'll take that off completely. We'll remove the head. Do we even actually have the chance to look at his head sculpt? Defaulted head is a fine-looking version of Snout Spout, replicating again the way he looked in the vintage toy. There's technically articulation, so this does move up and down. There's a little hinge right there, so you can actually lift the nose up a little higher if you want. But what we're going to do for this, at least, is remove the head completely, just taking it off the ball joint, putting it to the side. And then we're going to grab this head sculpt, which for me I find is actually an inferior head to the much cooler Snout Spout. I actually kind of like the cartoon eyes a little bit more. But this one has now yellow eyes. It's got some additional black paneling onto the top and some nice additional black on the side. I think it's just too much. It's just too much. And it actually doesn't even have any articulation here because, of course, this has to be completely hollow in order to hold the water inside. What we're going to do is we're going to clip this onto his back, and because everything is sort of all really all pulling itself. I mean, if you put this on, then it pulls the head down. If you lift the head up, then it usually then pops the backpack off. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this basin of water. Again, I don't know why I'm saying it like that. And what you're going to do is just put this in, and we're going to let go of the button. And that's going to fill a little bit of the water. Now, for all intensive purposes, then, if you were to squeeze the backpack, I'm going to just bring this a little bit closer in. Try not to get this everywhere. When you squeeze the backpack again, sorry for anybody that was trying to hold going to the bathroom during the course of this review. But again, you're just going to squeeze the back of the backpack, let go of it, of course. That's one crucial step. And that's going to suck in the water. And then from there, you're just going to press the back of it again. An old Snout Spout is taking a leak. I think I've gotten most of it actually back into the container. So at least that's a practical way, like the original vintage toy would still be able to allow you to do that. For me, I really refuse to really display a lot of these figures. Well, first of all, I don't really like to take any figure that's supposed to contain water inside. And usually you'll notice in these reviews, I don't tend to do that because the water's always the hardest thing to get back out. There's probably water going to be sitting now in there for the rest of eternity. It never really gets out completely. And you want to really make sure, of course, that as much of the water does get out because, of course, it's going to start to mold inside the chamber here. Still, I'm going to move this out of the way. Try not to spill it. Try not to spill it. Try not to spill it. I'm going to put that right over there. But yeah, once again, just to show you the detailing and the difference really between the two heads. While this one certainly is more practical from a gimmick standpoint, I still kind of like this head sculpt a lot more. And then, of course, I don't even have to worry about displaying the figure on the shelf with this big giant. Now, I'm already dripping. You can see what I mean. I'm dripping water now everywhere. A little bit, couple last drops. Okay, I think we got most of it out. Gonna have to leave that out to dry. But again, just to change the heads are really easy to do. You're just gonna, once again, just yank that off the ball joint, just like that. And we're gonna put that to the side and let it dry. Popping back in my favorite of the two heads. As for the rest of the detailing on the figure, he does have armor that matches the top of his head. Again, you got some really nice sculpting that they've done to the ears. This robotic elephant head, after all. He's got the tusks there on the side. Not any bit of a different color than the rest of the gray that they used for the head, but that's fine. Of course, he's got himself, surprisingly, a pocket right there. What was he actually storing in his pocket? Business cards? I've just put out a fire at your castle. Here's my business card. Call me if you have any more fires. He also has some silver down below. I do like the little touch of actually having the cross axes like that. I think that's a nice touch. And of course, when it comes to the body is still the standard body that we get with all the other Master Universe, with the, of course, exception of the fact that they've gone the more darker orange to replicate the colors of the original vintage toy. He's got some decently colored off purple. I mean, these are really cool looking purple gloves that he has. So, of course, that would have to have been retooled because this is actually part of his lower arm. So I'm pretty sure they probably would be able to use this at some point for another figure. And then really from the bottom of the legs, like the legs are new. I mean, they're not new in the sense, but they're new at least in color. But the legs are the same. What is different, though, and what is new is really technically the boots. The boots don't look like they've been used for any other figure, but I'm sure at some point they will be cycling that through and using that mold again. For the articulation here on Snout Spout, it's pretty much to be expected, as if you have been collecting already the Master Universe Origin stuff. It's all the samesies. Head is again on that ball joint, so you can rotate it back and forth all the way around. You can have it looking up. You can have it looking down. He has the additional articulation here for the snout portion, so of course that's also on a hinge. You can also rotate it back and forth as well. It's a softer plastic also, by the way. There's no hole or no worry, at least, of getting water in your eyes with this head sculpt. And then, of course, when it comes to his arms do come out the same way as all the other Master Universe figure. I know, this is the boring part of the review. Our arms rotate, all the way around. The figure does have also a swivel in his bicep, which also allows the arms to hinge back and forth, and the figure does have swivels in the hands. Waist swivel is the same. Articulation in the legs are exactly the same. They're using, of course, making use of that ball joint. Those allow the legs move forward and back. Not really much of a swivel happening. Single hinge on the knee. You can also rotate the lower leg, rotate the actual boot being a separate piece, and you can also hinge the feet back and forth and ankle pivot them. This would still be the same rule applying that, of course, if you did want to customize these, you can yank the arms off, you can yank the torso off and change the boots off, and of course you can replace the head if you did want to change it around with some of the other Master Universe Origins figures we've gotten before. Still a nice looking figure. Whether you decide to display him for gimmick or whether you decide to display him, well, simply just for a figure, Snout Spout's a nice looking figure. Once again, I think most of it has drained out. Bring back in the head sculpt. I don't think I would have changed anything. At least I like the idea that you have two different ways of displaying him. If I was committed and married to the idea that he always had to look like this, I would be a little bit more disappointed. But if you don't like this and you don't want to have to worry about putting water in there, even if you don't even decide to put water in there, but you just don't like the idea of a big cumbersome backpack on his back with a very obvious hose running from the backpack to the back of his head, you don't have to do that. You don't have to commit to that. Instead, you can display Snout Spout as just a fun-looking figure to put with the rest of your Master Universe Origins figures. So at least I can say that both heads had the time to shine here in final looks of Snout Spout. I'm actually displaying him with the water squirting head. Actually, though, to be fair, if you're a purist and did want to get yourself a Snout Spout and have him on display looking like the original vintage Snout Spout, technically this is the head that you would want to be using, as the original Snout Spout did have the black, did have the yellow eyes, and did have the longer nose like this. It did unfortunately have a big red backpack on its back, which I think was built to the figure. This at least is a case where you can actually remove the backpack, but because it's attached by a big honkin' hose, you'll notice already here as the figure spins around, you really can't. You have to commit to one. You either want to display him with the more cartoonier head, of course, I guess kind of looking more the way he looked in the cartoon, or if again you want to display him like this, you have to have the backpack go along for the ride. You can't remove the two. I think, though, in between takes, I managed to get most of the water out. I'm sure there's still going to be water sitting inside that hose, molding over the years that I'll have this figure on display. Unfortunately, one of the downsides of any figure that squirts water. But what do you guys think of Snout Spout? Not a pretty fun-looking figure, isn't it? And if you had the chance to pick up Snout Spout for yourself, which way would you like to display him? It's somewhat interesting, the fact that when we had a look at Mr. Leech, that is the Leech after all, I did actually want to display him in his classic look because that's the way that the vintage toy had him. Although in the case with Snout Spout, I almost feel the opposite. The backpack is just too much. It's too bothersome to have that much taken up on the back of his torso. And even though this is really the way that the vintage toy would look, I'm actually kind of digging the idea of having him displayed with a cartoonier head instead. But which way would you display Snout Spout if given the choice? Let me know down below in the comments section. And certainly as well, if you enjoyed this video, hit it with a like. If you're loving the content you're seeing and do want to stick around for more, not only are we going to be looking at more Master Universe Origins figures, but there's a whole bunch of new videos also coming your way. The crucial key to that is making sure that, first of all, you're liking the video. That is to say, if you're enjoying the content, you're subscribing. Of course, if you want to stick around for more. And of course, that you're turning on the bell notification so you're going to get the reminders every single time a new video posts. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.